to Business 140, Personal Financial Planning, Unit 2, Chapter 5. Well, we have finished Unit 1. We've done Chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4. We've done our first mini assignment, which was our financial goals, and we've taken test number 1. So we're 25% of the way through. Hope you're doing well with the course. I know you are. I also hope that you're thinking, this personal financial planning stuff can be pretty good stuff. It's some things I think maybe I need to be trying to help myself personally. Excuse me. I put this little drawing up here. If I ever do a personal financial planning textbook, this is going to be on the front cover. And so here's what I'm showing. Here you are. You've got a smile on your face. You're doing well in Business 140. You are a personal financial planner. Now, this you may not be able to see this quite as well as depending on the device you're looking at it. So I'm going to kind of point out what we've got. We've got some pinkish-looking line here, and this represents time. So this is a period of time from now forward. This is really, we said we do budgets a year in advance. You may want to break it down monthly, but our budgets are usually done for a year. So here's a year period of time. You've done your budget. You've budgeted your revenue. You budgeted your expenses, and you've also budgeted some savings. Why did you budget some savings? Well, part of the reason is you also have established some financial goals, some short-term, some intermediate, and long-term financial goals. So now you've got your time frame, you've got your financial goals that you're wanting to accomplish, and you have your budget that you've prepared that's going to help you accomplish those financial goals. Now, since money is green, I use money to represent an increase in wealth for you. Your wealth is increasing over time, and that's good. And you are preparing financial statements on yourself. So that represents those financial statements. So this little diagram kind of shows us where we are with personal financial planning. Our time into the future, our wealth is increasing, we're doing our budgeting, we've set our financial goals. We're off to a great start. Now Chapter 5, I kind of subtitled Chapter 5, Let's Buy Something. Chapter 5, I think the real title of it is Buying an Automobile, Buying a Home. Those are our two largest purchases for most of us. Certainly the home is the largest purchase for most of us that, as far as buying assets, buying things for ourselves and our family. So we want to talk a little bit today about purchasing that vehicle and purchasing that home. Now, I'm not going to tell you what kind of vehicle to buy. I'm not going to tell you what kind of home to buy. That's for you. But what we want to be sure that we do is, whenever we buy that vehicle or vehicles, whenever we buy that home, that it fits into our personal financial planning. We don't want our vehicle purchase and our personal financial planning to clash. In other words, you want to buy the vehicle that you want and that you need, but you want to have properly prepared for the purchase, the financing of that vehicle over time, and it's a part of your budget. The same thing for your home. So again, not telling you what to do by any means, what to purchase. Although it would be kind of fun if we were in class, I might ask you what kind of vehicle you'd like to purchase. But making sure that your purchase of assets, especially these large assets like this, fit in very nicely, and you make it a very nice part of your personal financial planning. You set up the financial goals to make these purchases, and you determine the best way to utilize your income, your revenue, and being able to accomplish those things. Okay. Making sure I don't fall off of this, let me get our handout for Chapter 5. And let's go through and talk about this a little bit. Now, what I've done in Chapter 5 is that we're going to start off, this side of the page has to do with buying a vehicle. This side has to do with buying a home. So let's look at some things that we need to consider when buying a vehicle. Now, if you look at my handout, there are several things that we're going to talk about as it relates to the vehicle. The affordability, the operating cost, gas, diesel, hybrid, new, used, or nearly new, the size, body style, features, reliability, warranties, and then do we trade in, fuel economy, safety. So we're just going to discuss some of these things from a personal financial planning point of view, so that when you buy that vehicle, you've taken these things into consideration, and you've purchased the vehicle that you want and need that fits in with your personal financial plan. Okay, affordability. Before going out to shop, determine what you can afford. Am I going to make a down payment? How much of a down payment do I want to make? What do I want my monthly payments to be? I know about what I can afford to pay a month on a vehicle. You can make those decisions. Now, does that mean you can't move it a little bit? Well, sure. But you can have a pretty good idea of what do I want to pay down. That may be a financial goal for you, so much money for a down payment. And what are my monthly payments going to be? What's the maximum that I want them to be? So that's affordability. You need to make sure that you know what you can afford, I guess is the best way to say that. There's a little thing I'm moved in here. It says it shouldn't be more than 20% of your monthly net income. That's just kind of a rough rule of thumb. The second thing we need to look at is operating cost. It costs to operate a vehicle. Now, there are fixed costs. That's that monthly payment that you make, and then there are variable costs. You're going to have certain things that you're going to have to do over the life of the vehicle. You're going to have to put fuel in it on a pretty regular basis. You're going to have to maybe put tires on it occasionally, things like that, and you're going to have to pay insurance on that vehicle. So you have variable cost and you have fixed cost. Now, something I did not put on your handout, but it's something that's really important, and it's something that I want you to know, and it has to do with depreciation. What is depreciation? You know? I know you probably do. Now, you may not say, I'm not sure I can put it in exactly the right words, but I know what depreciation is. It's when something loses value. Yeah. Basically, depreciation is the loss of value because of use, over time. And the way you determine what the depreciation is, it has to do with what it costs, what you can sell it for. That difference would be depreciation. I think the way our author puts it in here, the loss of the value of an asset, such as an automobile, that occurs over the period of ownership. It's the difference between the price initially paid and the subsequent sales price. So I want you to know what depreciation is, because when you buy a vehicle, that's going to increase your wealth, because you're going to have bought or purchased an asset. But that particular asset over time is going to depreciate in value. So when you do your balance sheet and you're listing your personal assets and you list your vehicle, the amount that you list that vehicle for is going to be the market price at the time that you're doing your financial statement, and that's probably going to go down over time. So just be familiar. Just know what depreciation is. Then you've got to determine, do you want gas, diesel, hybrid? That's kind of a personal choice. A lot of times what the cost of a gallon of gasoline has something to do with what we think about there. Most of us just buy the gas type vehicles. You may want an electric vehicle, whatever. New, used, or nearly new. Used is not, we don't use the word used anymore in the marketing of vehicles. They're not used, they're pre-owned. Sounds better, doesn't it? But here's the deal. What's a big advantage of buying a pre-owned vehicle or a used vehicle? Well, somebody else has taken the depreciation hit. Most of the depreciation on a vehicle, or a lot of it, comes in the first year or two. So it's 2020. I could buy me a brand new 2020 automobile, but I might find me a low mileage 2018 vehicle that I really do like, and I can get it for substantially less because of depreciation. Okay. Body style, features, that sort of thing. The thing I'd say is this: predetermine your options. Decide ahead of time what options you want on your vehicle. I bought the truck that I have right now. I have four-wheel drive on that truck. Now, do I really need four-wheel drive? The answer is probably I could get by without it. Okay, but I wanted four-wheel drive. Maybe an occasion that I need four-wheel drive. And you can just tell by looking at me, I'm just a four-wheel drive kind of guy. Okay, I know you're smiling, or you should be, maybe laughing. But the idea is, it's okay to do that. Four-wheel drive vehicles cost more normally than a two-wheel drive, but that's okay if that's what you want. You are planning for it. It's your financial goal, and you're budgeting appropriately to be able to make that purchase. Okay, but you know, when you go out to buy that vehicle, already determine what you need, because that salesperson is going to try to sell you up. You really need heated cup holders. No, you probably don't. So have an idea of what you want, know what you can afford, and that gives you a lot of power when you go out there to purchase. Reliability and warranties, you know, a lot of vehicles have some really neat warranties. And you can hold the cost down on the vehicle because for a long time certain things are covered. And if something goes wrong with that, it doesn't cost you anything, it's under warranty. Now, if you're getting ready to buy a vehicle and you have a vehicle, you could trade that vehicle in, or you could sell it. Most people will say you'd probably get more money for selling it than trading it in. However, a lot of us don't like the hassle of having to go out and sell it. I've done them both ways. And remember this, just like we're going to talk in a minute about negotiating the price of the vehicle, you can also negotiate your trade-in. We'll give you this much of a trade-in. Well, I need a little more than that. Fuel economy, that may be very important to you. So that may be a real factor that you look at. Safety features. You and your spouse, you have two children, a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old. I bet safety comes up a lot in your mind. So one of the things that you might really be looking at in this vehicle, you want something that is safe. I would just be familiar with some of the different things that you would want to consider when you're going to be purchasing a vehicle, like affordability, operating cost, gas, used, new, pre-used, pre-owned, that type of thing. I'd just be familiar with some of those factors that you need to consider, and I would know what depreciation is. Now, let's talk about the purchase transaction itself. As I've already kind of mentioned, the sticker price is usually a negotiating price. The sticker price is not normally what you're going to pay, unless it's a very unusual situation. You can negotiate off of the sticker price. And you can get on the internet now. You can do a lot of comparison shopping and things like that, and get some really good feels for cost and all of that. I'd be familiar with the fact that the sticker price should be most of the time a negotiating price. Closing the deal. There's something called a sales contract. You can negotiate back and forth, but if ever the sales contract comes out with here's what we've said, here's what we decided, let's sign. Once you sign that sales contract, it's a legal document. So negotiations can continue to the point that you execute the sales contract. I have a little side note over here. Might you trade in your loan? Sometimes if you finance your vehicle, and most people do, and you finance it at a certain interest rate, sometimes interest rates go down, and you might be able to refinance your automobile. So it's not a bad idea to remember what the interest rate is that you're paying on your vehicle loan. And if you see the interest rates are going down, you might go to your financial institution and say, hey, I wonder if I can refinance this. All right, leasing a car. Sometimes folks prefer to lease than to buy. About 25% of people will lease vehicles. You might be familiar, I want you to be familiar with about leasing a car. I want you to be familiar with about 25% of folks do lease vehicles. And I want you to be familiar with the fact that you might consider trading in your loan, so to speak, if interest rates go down. The way most leases work is what's called a closed-end lease. You lease a vehicle for a certain period of time, say 36 months. You may have to pay an amount down. You pay a monthly amount for so many months, and then when you at the end of those 36 months, you bring the vehicle back in. You say, "Here's the vehicle. I've enjoyed it for 36 months. See you," and you walk away. That's a closed-end lease. Now, a couple of things about a closed-end lease. Yes, you walk away, except normally when you have a leasing situation, there's a mileage limit that you can have on that vehicle. So maybe a 36-month lease, you have 36,000 mile limit. If you come in there and you've got 60,000 miles on that vehicle, you're going to have to pay an additional money before you can walk away from it, because you put more miles on that vehicle than your lease allowed you to do, and those more miles on that vehicle made that vehicle, it depreciated that vehicle more. The second thing would be if it came in with a whole bunch of bumps and everything, some dents in it. Normal wear and tear is going to happen over a 3-month period of time. But if you bring it in dented or whatever, you're probably going to have to take care of that. So sometimes you may own a business. Like I have a good friend in Shreveport that owns a business. He leases a vehicle for his business. So that lease payment, and all the things associated with that, he can deduct those things as business expenses. All right. So that's kind of the idea behind vehicles. Not telling you what, by any means, that you want, because you know what you want. Just make sure it fits into your personal financial planning, and make sure that we think about some of these things that we've talked about. Of course, there were a few, the main no thing in there was depreciation. Let's look at buying a home. That's probably the most biggest purchase that any of us will ever make. Now, just like in some ways, it's similar to a vehicle. You may want a 1-story ranch style. You may want a 2-story. I watch every once in a while. I watch HGTV when they house hunters when they go out and everything. So I know all that natural light, all that stuff they talk about. Okay, but just like there's a whole lot of different types of vehicles, there's a whole lot of different type of homes. So you have to find that home that best fits your needs. And that could be a number of different things. Now, one other little thing, kind of a side note, just like instead of purchasing a vehicle, you might lease a vehicle. Instead of purchasing a home, you might rent. So let's talk just a little bit about renting. He said, why would somebody rent instead of purchase? Because when you rent, when you leave, you haven't gotten anything. It doesn't belong to you. So you haven't built up any value. It hasn't helped increase your wealth. You may be renting a mansion, but if you do your balance sheet, it doesn't show up on there because it's not yours. But I jotted down a few little reasons why people rent. You don't have any down payments that you have to make, no closing cost, and we'll talk about what those things are in just a few minutes. You may not be settled yet. You may not be sure where you're going to live, and you don't have to deal with buying and selling a home until you make sure you have that determined. I don't want the responsibility for a house. I don't have to worry about the yard. I don't have to worry about something breaking down. I don't care. I rent a place. That's what I want. That's what I want to do. Or, you know, wait a minute, I'm just going to rent now, I'm not sure what I want. I'd like to kind of get my personal financial stuff in order, and maybe later on I can buy something nicer. So there's a number of reasons that you might want to utilize the rental option. He made a little statement here I'd like for you to be familiar with. He says, when you're trying to decide whether you want to rent or to buy, he said the economic conditions, just the overall economic conditions, your personal needs, which we've already talked about up here, and the housing market are things that you need to consider when you're considering whether to rent or buy. So I'd be familiar with that. All right, let's say we're going to buy, because most people do at some point in time. Kind of a great American dream is to own your own home. When you buy, there's some advantages to owning your own home. First of all, there's a tax shelter. When you pay your federal taxes, there's a couple of things you can deduct off of your federal taxes. One of them is the interest that you pay on your home loan mortgage. If you're paying an $800 a month house note, a lot of that $800 is going to pay the interest on that as well as the principal. So if I borrow $200,000 and I'm paying $800 a month over 30 years, I'm going to end up paying more money in interest than I did in principal. And so that interest that you're paying each month can be deducted off of your federal taxes. Also, if you own that home, you're going to have to pay property taxes on that home, unless it's, you know, it's homestead exempt. But those property taxes can also be deducted from your federal tax. The second advantage is you have an inflation hedge. Now here's the deal. You see that depreciation for automobiles? This is something pretty nice. If you buy a place and you buy it in a good area and you keep that place, your home up, and your land up and all that sort of thing, what's the value of that home going to do? Appreciate. It actually will go up. Now, is that true in every case? No. But in most cases, the home that we have, we've been in about 15, 16, 17 years. It has appreciated a lot in value. It's in a good location. We keep the home up. We keep it well manicured. So, you know, it appreciates. So that's a great thing. Whereas a car is going to depreciate on you, home and taking care of it, buying it in a proper location and that sort of thing, with your location's important, that home is going to appreciate in value. It's going to make you wealthier just through appreciation. All right. Now, let's go through the cost of home ownership. Let's talk about some things as it relates to owning a home. Now, are you saying, oh my gosh, don't buy a home? No, I'm saying, I think you probably should. At the appropriate time, buy the home that you can afford, and since doing good personal financial planning and doing all this stuff we're talking about, just like you can determine what type of vehicle you want and need and can afford, you can do that same thing with your home. So let's look at some things that we need to consider. Down payment. Most of us are going to put in some type of a down payment. When you get ready to buy a home, you're not going to pay cash for it, more than likely. You're going to go to some mortgage lender. You're going to go to some company, and that company, you're going to borrow that money. Just like if you go to the bank and borrow money for an automobile, you can go to a bank or financial institution, and that's who you're going to go to borrow the money for your home. When you go to that mortgage lender, a lot of times a great down payment is 20%. If you can pay 20% down, okay? So one of your financial goals is, I'm going to buy a new home and I'm going to pay 20% down. So you're going to be budgeting money to savings and investing that money so it can grow, so when you get to that point, you can make that 20% down payment. Can you buy homes and pay less than 20% down? Yes, you can, but a lot of times whoever is lending you that money, they're saying, okay, we would prefer 20% down. So we're only financing 80%. We'd like to finance 80% of the value of that home. But if we finance, you only pay down 10% and we finance 90% of that home, then that 10% difference that we're not, that we're financing above the 80%, we'd like you to buy additional insurance to cover that, so that if you don't make the payments on that home, then that 10%, we have insurance to cover us. All right, now you say, wait a minute, that's called PMI. I wrote that down for you. Private mortgage insurance. I'd be familiar with what PMI is, private mortgage insurance. Okay, here's what it says. An insurance policy that protects the mortgage lender, that's the bank, from loss in the event the borrower defaults on the loan, typically required by lenders when the down payment is less than 20%. So if you're going to buy, I'll make it really simple. If you're going to buy a $100,000 home, if you pay 20% down, that's $20,000. You would finance $80,000. If you only pay 10% down, you would be financing $90,000. $80,000 is the preference. So that $10,000 difference, you would buy PMI insurance so that if you defaulted, the mortgage company could get that $10,000 difference paid to them. That's what that is. Okay, points and closing costs. Not going to talk about points because points have been gone for a long time. Closing costs. If you've ever bought a home, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. It's a legal transfer from one person or family to another. There's all kind of paperwork that has to be done. There's a title check. We'll talk about that. There's a lot of stuff that happens in getting everything ready, all the documents, and there's a thick stack of documents prepared. So when you're sitting there at the table and you're closing, and you're sitting on this side, and there's somebody sitting on that side, and here's the person that did own it, and here's you getting ready to buy it, and then there's somebody from the mortgage company that's there, and there's probably a couple of attorneys there, and it's all getting done. Somebody has those keys in their hand. The realtor is there as well, and what you're looking for is then to put those keys in your hand so you can drive out to that thing, open that lock, and say, this one is ours. This is our home. Okay. There's a lot of work it takes to get all that done. Those are closing costs. Closing, at some point before they put those keys in your hand, they're going to give you a bill and say, okay, here's what we've done. We've done, excuse me, we've done this, and this, and this. Closing cost, X number of dollars, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. So one of the things that you need to be prepared for is to pay the closing costs. And so in your negotiations and you're doing this, you may want to be sure that you know what the closing costs or an estimate what the closing costs are going to be. It's just a cost. It's a cost to close the deal. I want you to be familiar with what that is. Mortgage payments. You're going to pay so much per month for that house. As I mentioned to you, you're going to be paying more probably for interest than you are principal over the period of that loan. In other words, if you borrow $200,000 for 30 years for a home, at the end of that 30 years, you're going to have paid more than $400,000 to that mortgage company. $200,000 was the principal, the other is going to be the interest. Mortgage payments, it says here, I'd be familiar with this, usually mortgage payments are about 25 to 30% of the monthly gross income. That's kind of a good rule of thumb if you want to use that. It doesn't have to be, but just a good rule of thumb. Property taxes and insurance. As I already mentioned, you're probably going to have to pay some property taxes if you're above homestead exemption. In Louisiana, I think $75,000, first $75,000 on the value of a home is property tax exempt. But you're going to have to pay property taxes. Property taxes are simply taxes that are paid to local governments. I'd be familiar with that. And then you're going to have to pay property insurance. you're going to have that property insured. Now, obviously, why wouldn't you? You would want to. But not only that, the person who lends you the money, they're going to make sure that you have property insurance in case of a fire or tornado or something, and that you pay your property taxes. And the way they're going to do that is when you pay your monthly mortgage, that you're paying back that $200,000, you're going to also be paying an additional amount of money each month. And that's an amount of money that the mortgage company is going to use to pay your taxes for you and to pay your insurance. So in other words, since they have the mortgage and you owe them $200,000 or some portion of that, to make sure that they don't lose anything because the house burns down or you didn't pay your taxes, they're going to collect that money from you monthly. They're going to put in what they call escrow, and then they're going to pay the insurance company, and they're going to pay that government. All right. Maintenance and operating expenses, always taking in consideration that your home is going to have certain maintenance and operating expenses. If you have a solid brick home on a small lot and it's a new home, your maintenance and operating, and it's well insulated and all that stuff, your maintenance and operating expenses are going to be pretty low. But if you have a different type of home with different types of stuff, and it's an older home, then your maintenance and operating expenses, your utilities are going to be more. Just take that in consideration. You mean I got to buy a little small house on a small lot and all brick? No. You buy what you want for you and your family that fits into your personal financial planning. But for it to fit in your personal financial planning, just remember that some homes, the utilities, the maintenance are going to be more expensive than others. Just take that into consideration. The home that we have is an A-frame home, which is mostly wood and roof. You know, the roof is a big part of an A-frame. There's no brick on our home. It's all wood and roofing. We have a pool at our house, and we live and have a big pond or a small lake, whatever you want to call it. And we have a couple of acres. Okay, the maintenance on that is more expensive. So when you buy that house, you're going to have more maintenance utility expenses than you would on a different type of house. That's okay, you just have to know it. Okay, the home buying process. Shop the market, sure. Gosh, you've got the internet now, you've got all kind of things. A lot of times you're going to end up using an agent, a real estate agent or real estate broker. Now, here's how that works most times, not always. I want to buy this house right here. And most people who sell a house, they list that house with an agent. They can do it by owner, but a lot of times it's a lot with all that has to be done. It's better to list with an agent. So when you go to see a house that you're looking at buying, you're probably going to pull up in that yard to see that house, and that real estate agent's going to pull up there too, and that real estate agent's going to go in and show you the home and that sort of thing. Just remember this, be familiar with this. Remember, the real estate agent works for the seller. Now, they're going to be very professional, they're going to do a good job, they're going to be considerate of your needs and everything, but just know that the real estate agent is working for the seller. So they're trying to get as good a price and everything and show that house in the best light possible, because the amount of money they make is going to be determined on if they sell it and for how much. So just keep that in mind. Here's something that you can do sometimes that can be really helpful. It gives you kind of a one-up on things. One of the big deals is buying a home. Okay. But to buy a home, you got to be able to get a home loan. See, that's what all this personal financial planning is about. Doing your financial statements, keeping your finances in order. It makes it so much better and easier for you to be able to obtain financing for a home like a purchase like a home. And here's what you can do that's really pretty neat. You determine who you want to borrow your money from. You may talk to several different lenders. But you go to a lender, and you've been thinking about it. You pretty much know what you want in a home. and you say, you know, Bill, for me to buy the home for my family and I that we really want, it may cost us up to $300,000. We'd like to get a pre-qualification for that loan. Now, what does that mean? That means that you are going to give all the documents and you're going to do all the things to that mortgage lender, Bill, and his company. You're going to give all that stuff to them, your W-2s, your income tax return, all the stuff that you have to do to qualify for a loan. And Bill's going to get it all, and he's going to say, we have pre-qualified you for up to $350,000. We'll lend you up to $350,000 on a home. Now you've already got all that done. You know how much you can borrow from that lending institution. And then when you go and you're looking at buying a home and you're talking to the seller and you're talking to that seller's real estate agent, if in the conversation about the price of the home and stuff like that, and you can say, by the way, I have been pre-qualified already by my lender. Wow, their ears will pop up. Pre-qualified. That means the money for the mortgage for the loan has already been approved. It hasn't been granted yet, but it's been approved. So that gives you a lot of buying power. I mean, you got two people here standing here wanting the guy's trying to sell a house for $300,000. I'm standing here and I'm saying, well, I'd like to buy that house. I love it. I'll give you, I'll make an offer of $285,000 on it. And, but now I'm gonna have to go talk to a lending agent, you know, and get my finances and stuff together. Okay, I got a $285,000 offer, but I have no idea whether that person can buy that home or not. If we can come to an agreement of $273,000 on this home, I'm ready to move forward with it, and I've been pre-qualified for a loan, so I'm ready to move. You see the difference? You see the clout you have? Okay, that's pre-qualifying, not a bad idea. The real estate sales contract. You have a real estate sales contract just like you have an automobile sales contract. Now, the only difference is sometimes in a real estate sales contract, you'll have a contingency clause. I want you to be familiar with that. It means it's contingent on something. I'm going to sign a buy agreement. I'm going to sign a contract. But the contract is contingent on certain things. Contingent on the home having proper title. Contingent on me selling my home within 90 days. Some things like that. Contingent on the home getting a termite certification. It means it doesn't have them. So you can have, so a contingency clause are simply saying that a contract is a contract, but it's contingent on certain things happening. Let me see if I can find contingency clause. By the way, closing costs, all expenses that borrowers ordinarily pay when a mortgage loan is closed and they receive title. We talked about that a minute ago. I'm not going to look forever for contingency clause, but if I happen to run across it, a clause in a real estate sales contract that makes the agreement conditional on such factors as property inspections, that sort of thing. Just what we mentioned. Selling your own home. Closing the deal. All right. A title check. A part of what has to happen is, does that person really own the home? Do they legally, are all the legal T's crossed and I's dotted? Do they legally own it so they can sell it to you? Well, attorneys have to go in and do a title check to make sure that the seller has legal title to that home. Be familiar with what a title check is. A part of those closing costs is the expense of having the attorneys go in and do that. Last couple of things I think in this chapter. When you take out a mortgage, I'm gonna go behind the camera for just a second. I want to see how much space I have down here. Yeah, I've got a little bit, so I'm going to use this down here. I have a $200,000 loan, and I'm going to get a fixed rate loan. This is something I want you to know. I want you to know what depreciation is as it relates to vehicles, but I want you to know the difference between a fixed rate and an adjustable rate mortgage. Okay? A fixed rate says this: I'm going to borrow $200,000. I'm going to borrow it for 30 years. The rate of interest that I'm going to have to pay is 3.75%, making my monthly payment $900 a month. Now, I'm making these numbers up, so you say, that doesn't sound like that would work. Just work with me. That's a fixed rate. What does that mean, fixed? It means it's fixed. It means I'm borrowing $200,000. I'm borrowing it for 30 years. And for the entire 30 years, my interest rate is going to be 3.75%, and my monthly payment is going to be $900 to pay off the mortgage. Now, my monthly payment may be a little higher than that because, remember, they're going to collect for insurance and property taxes, but I'm just talking about the mortgage. That's a fixed rate. Okay, you can also borrow with what's called an adjustable rate mortgage. And that means that the interest rate adjusts based upon changes in the market interest rate. So I'm going to borrow $200,000. I'm going to borrow it for 30 years, but I have an adjustable rate. The rate may change over time, which means my monthly payment may change over time as well. Okay. Now, here's the idea. Let me give you a couple of things. If you're going to buy a home anytime soon, forget adjustable rate, because the fixed rate mortgages now are historically low. So we wouldn't even consider an adjustable rate. Now, why would a person ever do an adjustable rate loan? They would do one if they thought interest rates were going to go down. Hey, I'm going to get my mortgage loan, and the prevailing rate right now is 5%. But I think the interest rates are going to go down. So as they go down, my interest rate will adjust. Because if they go up, they'll adjust that way. But right now, in 2020, an adjustable rate mortgage is not even something you'd want to consider, because the interest rates are never going to go down lower than what they are now. And if they do, it'll be such a small amount, it really would not make any difference at all. So I want you to know what a fixed rate mortgage is. The traditional type of mortgage in which both the rate of interest and the monthly mortgage payment are fixed over the full term of the loan. The interest rate and the monthly payment are fixed over the full rate term of the loan. 15-year loan, 20-year loan, 30-year loan, whatever it is. An adjustable rate mortgage. A mortgage in which the rate of interest and therefore the size of the monthly payment is adjusted based on market interest rate movements. As the interest rate in the market moves, your interest rate will adjust at different intervals of time, and your monthly payment. Okay, got that? All right. What's my last thing, I think? Refinancing. Now, this is a great way to finish as we're talking about this. Just like you might want to refinance your car loan, you might want to refinance your home loan. Let's say that you bought your home a few years ago. You paid 5% interest rate. That wasn't bad. 5% is pretty good. There's some interest rates out there right now that are under 3%. Might it be advantageous for me to refinance with another lender? Say, hey, look, would you refinance whatever I have left on my mortgage? Can I finance that with you at a lower interest rate? Maybe something very advantageous to do. So just be familiar with the fact that sometimes it's good to consider refinancing. It's a good idea to do it. The two no's in this chapter 5 are know the fixed rate, adjustable rate, and the difference between the two, and no depreciation. Okay, that takes care of chapter 5. We're going to get into chapter 6, or I am in just a few minutes. I'm going to take a little break, come back and do chapter 6 with you. Buying a vehicle is exciting. Buying a home is huge. Want you to be able to do that, buy the things that you want and you need, and the way you do that is you utilize really good personal financial planning. Okay, loud clap Professor Pierce to know that I have finished with chapter 5, and I'll see you soon in chapter 6.